Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay. All right, so let me tag you in this, Geoff. Okay, so any second now you should see it pop up on your profile. And just let me know once you see it, and you should be good to go.
Okay, so I'm looking on my Facebook profile.
Yes, sir. And then you can share that link wherever you want to share it.
Let's see. I don't see it yet unless I'm looking in the wrong place. Okay.
Yep. So I'm on your profile now. I can see it on your profile. So maybe just refresh your screen and it should pop up. And for anybody who's watching, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a minute to get started as we get the technology piece handled. And I decide whether or not I want to let my hair down.
You look good either way, young man.
All right. So yeah, we're good to go on my end. Did you see it on your profile yet?
Not yet.
Okay. That's weird.
That could be me though.
Okay. Well, I'm on your profile now, and I can see it. Let me just double check one more time. All right. So Geoff, I'm on your profile. I can see the post on your page. All right. So Stev, can you see us? I see Stev in the comments. Can you see Geoff on his page? But I think you're good to go, Geoff.
Okay.
All right, so let's get started. So welcome to another edition of Wealth Talk Tuesdays. It's been a while since we've published an edition. So I want to thank Geoff for holding us accountable, as well as being available to actually interview today. Normally our editions of Wealth Talk Tuesdays are in the evenings, but with just the schedule change, we've had to shift the time frame forward. But that's one of the beautiful things about being an entrepreneur and working for yourself. You're able to make those adjustments on time, and you're able to do things according to your schedule or according to when you're available to do them. And this is a perfect example of me being available, as well as Geoff being available and having control over our schedule. So we'll talk a little bit about entrepreneurship, and that's actually a great conversation of control, which we'll bring up. But without further ado, I do want to formally introduce Geoff Tyson. I'll give a quick shot of his bio, and I won't try to steal his thunder and give him an opportunity to tell us a little bit about himself. But Geoff has a very long history of business experience and entrepreneurship. Has at least 38 years of business. I believe about 18 of those years have been on the entrepreneur side. The first 20 or so was in corporate America, where he was able to get a lot of experience, a lot of exposure, executive level experience and exposure, as well as management skills that he was able to then use to parlay that experience and that exposure and those skills into doing his own entrepreneurial thing. So for the last 18 years, he's been building his real estate business, and actually building a real estate business from a couple of different angles, which I'll allow, definitely allow him to talk about. But Geoff has been in the trenches literally 4 times as long as I've been an entrepreneur. So I am honored. I'm blessed to be able to sit down with such a seasoned veteran in the business game, the real estate world, the entrepreneurship world, as well as a lot of other different aspects of life. So thank you, Geoff, for being on today's show. And if you wouldn't mind, just tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Kevin, for making this possible, extending the invitation. I mean, your message and who we serve is similar to who we seek to serve, and just being able to sit down, like you said, and just chop it up for a moment, man. I've been waiting for it for a minute, right? And I appreciate the introduction. And recently, I'm all those things that he said, from the real estate perspective, I'm kind of known, as the king of rehabs, and that's the whole story behind that. But the value in that, that was given to me by other investors in the marketplace. So as a nugget for those of you looking to get involved in real estate, try and find some niches that you can build and gain some experience in, and more importantly, kind of start to separate yourself in the game, right? I mean, we bought and still do the raggediest, ugliest houses on the block. Stuff you see on TV, where other investors are saying, "Are you crazy? What are you doing?" But from that, Kevin, we were able to show that we had the capacities and capabilities of turning those properties around. And number two, and more importantly, we were able to become a resource for those new real estate investors that were, jumped off the fence, bought these properties, and then realized they were way over their head.
Yep.
Right. And able to help them not only fix that, but then be a resource for other deals that would come along with them. That they were like, okay, we know Geoff, we'll give this to Geoff first and see if they can handle it and then move on. So it's a natural flow of business for us. So, I was thinking about some projects the other day, man. We didn't have any business buying quite a few of them. But we made them work, though. Teams make the difference in that space.
I like that. And a couple things I heard you say. You talked about capacity. You talked about capability. You also talked about problem solving and being able to get through problems or issues that may have been unexpected, or that were totally or partially out of scope for what your threshold might have been. So some of those things I think are key to entrepreneurship: the problem solving, the being adaptable, being willing to take on challenges. How would you describe, or how do you think some of those things play into entrepreneurship in general? Just the adaptability, the problem solving, and also the willingness to get through those problems and those issues, and the reality that you will have problems and issues.
And that's a really deep and detailed question, and I'll try to do my best to kind of, maybe before I speak to it directly, I want to say that we've all been through what Kevin just described in life. We've all faced similar things that we had to adjust to and measure our capabilities, and then recognize the things that we need to do differently, and then find help along the way. Right? When you were asking that question, I started thinking about a time in my life where, I was just getting started, man, a young kid, man, and really, the guy you see today is not who I was at 6 or 7 years old, man. I really struggled academically, and the outcome of my life wasn't what I thought it would be. But to your question about, overcoming adversity, I hung in there, man, and I found out that some of the things that weren't true about me, and I found out there's this whole thing about mindset at an early age, right? I mean, so to your question, the first thing that comes to mind is the mindset, and having mindset practices that help you get prepared for the unknown, help you stay focused when things go wrong, because they're going to, right? Help you, not just stay motivated, but there's so much power in the space between our ears, Kevin. I mean, there's just so much there. When we talk about Wealth Tuesday, how many of us spend the time investing in the space between our ears on a regular basis, right? Because those are the lessons that I was able to do and develop. So when I get into corporate America and I find out, all these things that come up that I didn't know what to do, and things were changing on a continuous basis, right? And each promotion brought a whole new set of new things to do and learn. And here's another nugget I want to say: you have to learn to get comfortable making decisions without having all the answers.
All the answer.
The decisions around uncertainty and all that. And I'm not saying just be crazy with no focus and no research, but you're not going to know it all, right? And when we're organizing, and I'm going to date myself a little bit, but back when the world was going to come to an end, then what was it, 2000, when the technology was changing, and you're going to those platforms, right? And I was with a huge company, and our operations was to help them transfer that old system into the new system. And I'm not going to pretend like I'm the guy. I was the coordinator, right? But I had to understand, Kevin, what was happening with all that stuff. And man, it was frightening at times, okay, for a couple of reasons. One, again, I wasn't the technical expert. I knew enough to be dangerous, but I had a team around me to help me there. And two, there were some things I didn't know what the outcome was going to be because nobody tested it. Mm-hmm. Right? But we made it happen, and we're all still here today from that. Those are just a couple of things that, like, even before you get into entrepreneurship, baby, but that's a whole nother space. In corporate America, I had bigger teams and resources I can pull from. But as a beginning entrepreneur, some of those things you don't have yet. But don't let that stop you. Don't let that be the reason, right? If I'm about developing communities, encouraging entrepreneurs to develop communities. In other words, if you're a real estate investor and you want to get started, there's tons of information you can get that help you get started. I would suggest you find someone that you can relate to and start to create a mentorship, invest in yourself on the training and education side. But know that you're not going to have all the answers. You're not going to always be right. And you're going to make a bunch of mistakes along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're definitely going to make those mistakes, but some of those mistakes can be reduced or eliminated by having the right community. And one of the things you talked about mindset, but also the mindset shift. And one of the things you mentioned that, the things that were being said about me or were being told to me, I later found out that those things weren't true. Essentially, you got to a space where you made a decision to define or take over control of how you define yourself, of how you value yourself, what you believe is possible for yourself, what you believe you're capable of. And one of the things that helped that was mindset and perspective, but also some type of education process that went into that. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of self-education, as well as self-education, and why that is so important to the evolution of a human being?
Oh man, that's a subject that we could talk forever on. I won't do it because I know it's just there's more to talk about. But the self-education. Can I speak of the industry?
Yeah, absolutely.
How powerful that is.
Yeah.
And anybody out there that, we all hear about the resignation revolution, right? And people are saying, man, I'm done. COVID has led me to the point where I'm ready to do something different. I'm ready to finally, I like my job. I've been good at my job, but I like the idea of being at home and having more control and being more flexible. And I think I can do this thing I've been wanting to do for the last 30 years, but I've been too afraid to do.
Yeah.
Right. And now, Kevin, man, it's been amazing. This whole self-education tool. There are resources out there for people that want to move into different lanes. There are now people that realize, hey, listen, I'm pretty good at sales and negotiations, and I'm willing to share the pitfalls along the way. And and if you want to get into a consulting job, here's 5 reasons why you need to keep your corporate job until you get to a certain point, to move into consulting work. Or here's 10 ways to manage your corporate job and build another side business if it's just a hustle for you. So all that information is becoming more prevalent now at our fingertips.
Yeah.
Kevin, man, I got to tell you, listen, it has leveled the playing field. I mean, I tell people all the time, now there's no greater time than to step into whatever that little voice in your head is, that little vision you've always had, and pursue that, because there's people out there that can help you get it, right? I mean, I'm a true believer in real estate. I mean, we invested from the beginning in a high performance training education program, right? Because I knew that, there were certain things I didn't know, and I didn't want to recreate a business. They had the tools and everything else like that I could move into that business without having to recreate it. And, I've always been, one that believes in self-education and self-development, right? And the self-development piece is really, that's up to all of us to take more responsibility of, all right? Because that should be a prerequisite in course. I mean, you should, they said Sarah Blakely's dad told her, I mean, one of the things that she shared is every time they would talk about school, he would always ask her, so Sarah, what is it that you failed at today? And so what do you think that psychic creates in her mind about failure? Man, failure is like a contest. Failure, to achieve something. So what if you fail? You go back and do it again, Kevin. And we look at failure as a negative. We look at having to struggle as a negative. And it's not that way. And people can find out tools that help change their life and change it right now.
Yeah. And it's your perspective is doubly powerful because you've been around for a long time, right? And so you've seen how people interact with each other. You've seen how the gates of information have been essentially opened in a lot of different ways in a lot of different areas, because before the internet, before YouTube, right, before the type of environment we have now with the readily available information, a lot of stuff you just couldn't get it. You didn't have access to it. There were no ads to make you aware of it. All of these different nuances. So you've seen information and the way information passes to people and how that has changed, people's lives and society over time. I mean, this phenomenon that we're in now has been the last 10, 20 years, really definitely the last 10 years. But part of that is part of what we're talking about now with entrepreneurship, where you have someone who was working in an individual role, or they may still be working in a corporate role, but they have skills, they have an awareness, and they have decided that they want to be able to provide that education to somebody else. And so we have this peer-to-peer learning environment where, if they want to learn a certain aspect of real estate, they can go to you. If they want to learn a certain aspect of real estate, they can come to me. If they want to learn a certain aspect of government contracting, they can go to a particular individual for that. But a lot of that is because people have raised their hand and recognized, one, the power of information, the mindset of wanting and willing to share and not try to hoard, what they know, and realizing that there's a bigger benefit when they can, share that. So, that's a great perspective. And I like to, one of the things you had talked about was the mentorship piece, investing in yourself, investing in a system. I can speak from experience. My first, really like the first 8-9 years, before I even really started using social media, my downfall was that I didn't take that approach. And I think the reason why I didn't take that approach initially is because when it came to real estate education, before, the online world of real estate education, you really had like your local REIA, and the REIA is still good. But the one that we had in our area, one of the ones that I was aware of, it seemed real salesy. I wasn't familiar with how much stuff costs. So they were trying to charge $5,000 and $10,000 and $20,000. And I'm like, I don't need this. But through time, through the pains of learning, as well as the maturity and being able to have a greater control over my ego, right? Because I think a lot of times when we don't want to share, or we don't want to go and get, specialized learning or whatever the case may be, sometimes that's our ego stepping in. And it might be from the perspective of, oh, I can do this myself, or I can figure this out myself, or I don't need anyone's help, or whatever the case may be. But when it comes to entrepreneurship, and when it comes to doing things right and speeding up that trajectory, taking the approach that you took, right? Like kind of like the franchising approach, it makes things a lot easier. And I dare say that part of that might have been because of your experience already. At that time, you've already had a lot of experience in business, a lot of experience in training and management. So you understood the value of having, all of these different tools and resources available to you. But nonetheless, understanding and knowing that value, and then being able to find people who can help you, accomplish whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, I think is a major, major lesson in entrepreneurship and in business.
Yeah, and I wrote down ego as one of the things that I had to sit aside in order to raise my hand, Kevin, and say, hey, you know what? I like this idea of this business. I'm thinking about, the insulation business we started. I really didn't know anything about that business. All I knew was this, that one, the housing market was on fire, and the type of product that they were doing, housing market, small hotels was on fire, and they needed this particular service, right? So there was a need. People are always going to have houses. They're always going to travel, even with COVID. So I'm like, okay. And I said, okay, so if someone's doing it, I don't want to learn from the person that is just doing it as a hustle and a hobby and dabbling. Connect me with the manufacturer that has the right products, because we did all this green building and focusing on LEED and all that back in the late 90s. So that was kind of new, right? And it was insulation. Insulation is not very sexy, Kevin. Especially the stuff you spray on the walls and this new paper that blows back in your face, right? It's cellulose insulation, polyurethane foam. So I'm going from suit and tie to, mask and goggles and
in the attic at that, attics and walls.
Attics and walls and 20 feet up, 30 feet up in the air, right? All these things. Because the other part about it was, I wanted to build this business myself. So I had to start from the beginning, from the ground, 7 days a week, 15 hours a day at times, because there was no stopping me. I'm going to do this business. I had spent 12 months with the job I was in, doing what I needed to do. I was building this business to where I could say, thank you very much, see you later. And I stabilized the income, right? So even for me, that I'm a gunslinger and I don't necessarily need all the things, I was smart enough to do that. So anybody out there thinking about it, find a way to stabilize your income, all right? And if you're frustrated and you can't take it, then don't wait, all right? Then do it, you'll find a way. And so it was a great experience. And I'll say, again, I didn't really know what I was doing in that business when I started. I can't say that enough.
Yeah.
You are never going to have all the answers. Stop sitting here telling yourself, when I get enough knowledge, then I'm going to start it. Because I'm going to tell you something. No, you won't. You'll never start it.
Yep.
Okay. It'll be like a message I saw the other day I sent out, and I meant to bring it here. Let me see if I can find it. I won't hold it up. It was about, oh man. If we leave our growth, may I
Yeah, absolutely.
If we leave our growth to randomness, then we're forever locked in mediocrity. Right? So in other words, in the simplified Jeff's version, if all you're doing is say, I'd like to do this and I'm wishing to do this, and you don't have it on this old-fashioned stuff called paper or computer or something, and you look at it every day and you tell yourself that, and you spend some time, and this sounds corny, I know, because I was that way too, but spend some time learning how to see your life the way you want it. That's the other thing. Stop looking at your life through your current circumstances. People just say, well, right now I got this going on, so I can't do that. No, don't do it. Sorry, I don't need to get off the subject.
No, it's all good. It's all good, because what you're talking about is that part of it is that clarity of vision.
Yes.
Part of it is goal setting. And so I'm running a 12-week program now where I'm going over a lot of basic entrepreneurship stuff with entrepreneurs. And that's some of the stuff that we've had to hammer out and I've had to stress was the clarity of vision. And then how do you develop that vision? How do you articulate it? How do you bring that all the way down to day-to-day action and making sure that the actions are in line with the vision and in line with the goals, right? That's making sure that you have some type of GPS system, to where you're right, to where you're trying to get to. You got to know where you're going in order for you to, to put that address into the GPS. Another thing you had mentioned, and I, I definitely felt this one was, don't let me lose the thought. Not having everything that you needed to get started, but knowing that once you get started, at some point in time, there has to be this continual elevation of skill set and perspective. So you can identify a need and say, hey, I got a hunch that this is going to take off, or that this is profitable, or that there's, a business opportunity here. I don't know everything, but let me get started. And as you get started, that momentum starts to pick up. It's also important to keep in mind that, you have to continue to develop as a person. You have to continue to develop as a business person. And then ultimately, in some form or fashion, that business may continue, it may not continue, but everything that you've learned, everything that you've experienced is now an asset that you own, right? That knowledge, that experience. Wealth Talk Tuesdays, we're talking about entrepreneurship. We're talking about wealth in a lot of different ways. When you talk about wealth, you talk about assets, you talk about liabilities. You have the asset, right? And now you've got an asset that you've been building on for 38 years in this business thing, but you have an asset that now you can utilize in different ways and leverage in different ways. And then ultimately you can leverage that into another business opportunity, more, whether through consulting, in this case, coaching and advising and mentoring. So can you talk a little bit about just and I don't want to try to rehash, what some of the stuff we've covered, but I think that's something important, is just everything that you learn is an asset that you ultimately are able to keep. And it's different from just working in a job versus when you're able to collect that information, that those assets under the realm of business ownership and entrepreneurship. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, that's really, and I was trying to follow the whole thing because
I'm sorry. Yeah, I've been talking too much sometimes.
No. It's a great question because everything stacks. I'm gonna summarize it to the best of my ability, and please tell me if I'm speaking to the question. But, everything stacks. Every piece. You either get hung up on it, or you take it and you sift through it. You sit the good things on the shelf to use later. You sit the things you learned from that were mistakes, not to repeat again, and then you move forward. And it made me think about. I talked about starting that business, working 7 days a week. I went, and my goal was to get out of that truck as quickly as possible, and and get to where I could strategize and plan and create, and not have to worry about whether the business was going to run. So we went from me and two guys and several two guys, right? I mean, when I say several, it was just one worked, one didn't, one worked, one didn't. But built that to 35 people or more, and we were on our way to multi-million dollars and all those things. And then life shows up, to your point, and that business went away overnight, after all that work, 7, 8 years of work. Man.
Yeah.
And then what do you do? And this point I want to make kind of fits into it, because what happens when you have to reset?
Yep.
Right? What happens when you're in that season of breathing, as Lisa Nichols talks about a lot, where you have to really set back and reset and reorganize and refocus. What do you do then? Because that's part of life. That's the real part of life. How do you handle those things? And you stack and you go back to all the times. And this is important for those of you out there to say, well, I haven't been in business before. If you've been in life at all, you've learned some things. You've made some pivots. You've done some things well. And you may not think so, but you more than likely you have. And those is what Kevin's talking about. You know, take those pieces. Look at, you know, I organize pretty well. I mean, if you're a mom and have kids, you get the award already, right? I mean, so many mothers say, well, I don't have any experience. I've raised my kids. No, that's all kind of organization. That's all kind of discipline. That's all type of leadership. That's right, Kev. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
The gift. My point is, we all have gifts already that we've done, like what he's saying. And then you know, for me and the actually, man, I was thinking it's like 40 something years now total. So and you know, my story, you know, people say, well, at 40 years, you should be in a different place. Hey, look, I've been on the mountaintop, I've been in the valley, right? I mean, and that's just how my journey's been, because I made choices that at the end were the right choice for me, but there were some setbacks in them. Those setbacks are nothing but setups for the future, right? You know, so am I speaking to your question? Because I didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you did a great job of putting that together, because to finalize that summary, like you said, everything stacks, right? All of those life experiences, the business experiences, the entrepreneurship experiences, all of that stacks on top of each other, and it can inform your future as you're able to look at it, you know, from the right lens and from the right angle. So in short, for example, the installation business and the experience of running that business over 8 years helped inform your next business after your reflection point, right? Like, I can speak to the same thing. I just went through my own reflection point and refocus, and, you know, deciding how we're going to move forward. And all of that was based on, or I was able to base my prior experience to help inform where I'm headed in the future, as well as things that you should do, shouldn't do, things you need to do, things you don't need to do, right? So that it all definitely stacks. And with business, it stacks on top of it, on top of each other, because you're able to continually give that back into some type of enterprise, some type of organization, something that you're building. And one of the things, a couple of things you had touched on that I want to circle back on. One, the most recent thing you talked about, your journey in life and your life journey. Well, one thing that I thought of is one is life's journey. And when I look at my life and I look at, you know, some of the experiences, I'm like, oh man, you know, I wish I didn't go through that, or I wish that didn't happen, right? But those are the decisions that you make, and especially in business, sometimes there are decisions that you make that you may not understand or feel the ramifications of until sometime down the line. But if your life journey and your life story is perfect, to me, you have less to offer to people, right? Because you can't speak to the real realities of what people actually face. And it's not to say that there's no value in having a perfect story, right? Where everything fell into place and it worked out perfectly, right? Because there's value there too. But I dare say that there's more value in you being able to relate in adversity than there is in you not being able to relate in adversity when it comes to the amount of people that you can impact and touch and help, right? Because I feel like people are going to face more adversity than they're not.
Well, you know what? Well said, first of all. I mean, and that's the difference, in my opinion, and why it's so important for the audience to hear that there is no greater time to learn how to deliver what it is that you have to share. And to Kevin's point, right? I mean, I was thinking about, man, what I heard was, well, okay, it's great if your life was rosy and you had all this success, you know, and everybody else, but most people don't have that journey, right? My journey was, well, I already shared a little bit, you know. I mean, I was a dumb kid in school, and shouldn't have got a college education because I had a 1.99 coming out of high school. I was a big professional football player. And that didn't work out, man. But you know, what happens, Jeff, when that business goes away overnight? What did you do then? You know, I mean, I was kind of like I had made it, Kevin. You know, I had a house on the hill, and you know, I was a heel knucklehead back then, so I wanted a car for every day, right? So I had that and all this stuff. But then what happens when it goes away? I mean, what do you do about self? How do you feel about yourself? Now, I gotta tell you, man, it took me down to my knees, man.
Yeah.
And my mentor at the time, my insurance agent, said, Geoff, look, you're not by yourself first. I wasn't the only cat on the road that was wiped out, right? I mean, it was just went industry wide, boom, overnight, because we were all tied to the housing industry, suppliers and other trades. So I felt better about that, but there was still that story and the luggage. I was still carrying the luggage from the past with me about being a dumb kid and couldn't read really well. And so what, you were a football star and all that, and you were still not, that whole image, that self-image and self-doubt, man. So I'm telling you that those are all gifts. Had I not been through that, had I not suffered that, I wouldn't have realized that, you know what? I built that business and I had a great time, but it wasn't about what I really want to do. It didn't allow me to fulfill, what I believe today, the gift of COVID has really shaken me up to do, which is learn how to use this whole technology platform. It's just amazing. Prior to COVID, Zoom or whatever they were doing, if it wasn't a phone call and a meet and greet meeting or something like that, I wasn't doing it.
Mm-hmm.
It was for somebody else, Kevin.
It was for somebody else, yeah.
Somebody else to do, man. And what a gift it's been, to impact thousands of people's lives from the conference room.
Right.
right from home sometimes.
Yeah.
From my car or from a picnic I'm having with my wife until she makes me turn it off. Right. Just stop. If you're worried about what COVID's taken away from you or what COVID stopped you from doing, stop it. Right. If it's not COVID, it's something else. Do yourself a favor. Pause, hit the pause button. And do like what Kevin's talking about, get some clarity on what it is that you really want to do, but you're scared to death to do. Okay, if it scares you, it's probably something you should be doing about it. Yeah. Right. Man, I can speak in this space for forever, and I don't want to do that because I know you have some other things we want to get to. So
that's all good, man. I definitely, I know. When you get into all the nuances of psychology and value creation and branding and all this type of stuff, the value comes from you being able to touch somebody else's pain point, for you to be able to speak to somebody's pain point, for you to be able to provide some type of insight or knowledge that will help them get through those pain points. And I'll give you a quick example of that. In a brief time, that we've known each other and we've interacted on our platforms, and I've seen your platform. It's helped me, just like in this conversation, it's helped me be more comfortable talking about my reflection point and my reflection experience. Because as you know, going through it, there are so many emotions. There's so much that impacts your self-confidence, that impacts your self-esteem. And like you had mentioned, the luggage that you carry around from these experiences, there's a whole healing process that has to take place within a person when they go through something challenging. So being able to have platforms like this and to share the information definitely is impactful and is definitely valuable. And one of the things I always like to kind of sit and try to capture as a feeling and as an emotion and as a mood is that if I had not gone through, what I've gone through, and I can say this personally, and now I'm taking the liberty to say it for you because we're here together at this moment of time. But had we not gone through our own life experiences, our own challenges, our own reflection points, then literally we would not be here right now. Right? Like we wouldn't be here talking, we wouldn't be here sharing, we wouldn't be here trying to learn from each other while also trying to help other people learn, because this moment in time was created some way, somehow. And I can track it back in my mind, every step, every day, but we can track this moment back to a moment in time where we were sitting on the edge of the bed, or, or in the car, or wherever it was when we were trying to figure things out. Well, this moment here is a manifestation of that life experience and that life journey. So whenever I get moments like that, I try to sit and I try to capture it and really say, wow, not only if I didn't go through what I went through, but if I did not persevere and continue on going through what I went through, then this moment in time wouldn't exist as it exists today,
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I can relate to everything you said. And you must have had a crystal ball or something, because you said sitting at the edge of the bed, I reminded me in the dorm room at, when they told me I couldn't play anymore, man. I was, at the edge of the bed, like, what's next? I had a 1.99 grade point average, man. I'm the class dummy, right? How am I going to graduate from college on time, right? Which, by the way, I did, because of what we've been talking about all day long. I found out, I raised my hand, I said, hey, obviously I need some help. I put the ego aside, because, but more importantly, Kevin, I didn't want to be like all my other buddies, that went to school, football stars, athletes, and most of them came back home and didn't succeed, right? And my mom and dad, I'm fortunate to have a mom and dad who raised us, loved us, and they're both gone now. 5 siblings all together, man. So we had examples of stuff. And I just, seeing them and how happy they were that I got the scholarship, because they were like, this boy is something.
This boy finally gonna do something.
Right? But so I had some deeper reasons, to stack and do that. And I want to share something that I didn't take a moment to share, just so people understand, man. When I talked about, my business going away overnight and having some feelings and all that, just imagine. I'm gonna take you through this story. So you're with me. I'm pulling up into a neighborhood where I'm the only one in the neighborhood, and it's not gated, but it's secluded, and so I'm in that space for a couple of years. Everybody loves me, and then my business starts to go sideways, and right. So I had everything I had paid for, right, and then I re-leveraged it to kind of save my business.
Yep.
And so, and I had this one vehicle that I just wasn't going to give it back to him, right? And so the man comes to my house, man, right, knocks on my door, right? And I was at the low point in my life where I didn't answer the door. I'm in this house, hiding around, and this guy's going around my yard with a flashlight. And I'm thinking, what do the neighbors think?
Yeah.
All that stuff. And I share that story because, that was one of the points where I'm like, wait a minute. All right, enough is enough. This is it. The next day, we made some other decisions and started to move away from that. But that was, wasn't the first, that took some time to get to that.
Yeah.
I laugh about it now, right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of glad, Kevin, that I was that way, because I'm kind of like, I'm nicknamed the quiet storm, right? So I'm kind of like, I get that point of no control and all that, and who knows what happened. So I'm kind of glad that, I ended up that way. But there's always going to, like Kevin said, and you said it so eloquently, all those things that happened to us, all those experiences that we had, step into those, share those experiences, because we're not alone. And people need to know. Look at this young man. He pops and doing all kinds of things, but he's giving it back. Giving it back. So kudos to you, man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. And yes, absolutely. You gotta step into it and know that whatever you're going through, whenever you go through it, there's a process, but eventually you'll get through it. Eventually you'll heal. And eventually you'll feel more comfortable and able to share that information, which is part of why I started Wealth Talk Tuesdays, to be able to have honest discussions about entrepreneurship, to have honest discussions about business, and to be able to highlight people who look like us, who look like me, who can relate that experience and relate that insight on top of all the cultural stuff, that we got to deal with. But so thank you for giving us that value. So we still got about 14 minutes or so. You kind of want to transition a little bit and initially we had one of the things we had mentioned and the conversation was about control and and being able to have this live interview at 3:30 in the afternoon, and how entrepreneurship and business gives you some of that control. Now, when I started Wealth Talk Tuesdays, part of my mindset was also being able to talk about the wealth of business, the wealth of entrepreneurship, not just from a dollar standpoint, from a lot of the other intangibles of wealth. And part of that mindset stemmed from my own experiences in the Valley and getting to a point where I realized that whether I got all the money in the world or whether I don't, whether everything is taken from me or whether it doesn't, I am wealthy, right? As a human being, as a person, I am wealthy, and I can label A, B, C, D, all of the reasons why I'm wealthy, and none of them had anything to do with money. And it was beautiful. I remember when that message came, and I used to give that message, and at the end, I used to have people affirm to themselves and pat on their chest and say, I am wealthy.
Yeah.
Well, in that same line of thinking, one of the intangible areas of wealth in terms of business and entrepreneurship is having control, and having control over your time and how you utilize your time. So what are some areas that you can think of in terms of wealth and business and entrepreneurship that might be intangible, that might not show up, as a dollar figure, but it's still something valuable, that you take advantage of, that you enjoy, that you appreciate, that you like?
I would speak, first thought as I'm listening to you is always push for proximity.
Mm.
Always find, and because just as an example, the last 3 weeks, I like to say I've been hanging out with folks like Damon John and Grant Cardone and Sarah Blakely and her husband and Dean Graziosi, who's one of my mentors, and because of the proximity that this system allows us to do, where I've been one-on-one conversations, out of thousands. So proximity, right? And then also, look at habits that, the little habits we do and start to stack on those. The Millionaire Success Habits is a great read by Dean Graziosi. And this is a guy who, his parents got married 5 or 6 times, and, he slept in his bathroom for a while, but he made a decision, Kevin, about, having control of his life. I'm not going to live like this, and my family's not going to live like this. And then there's the shared habits, right, that he used and practices to build a huge national, international business. But he started, making some small decisions. So proximity, start to stack habits, and look at those things. And I enjoy that, this particularly in this part of the season for me, and when we talk about that part. And so proximity, habits, the clarity of the why, and more, what I do enjoy is the contribution I'm going to make. We haven't talked since then, man. We'll have to circle back around, but I've come to terms with the last phase of what I'm here to do, in terms of my grandson. I was visiting with him. My wife and I were out there 10 days ago with him, and he's 3 years old now, and I've got a granddaughter, 2 granddaughters, and a grandson. I'm gonna make this story quick. But with the world being the way it is, and the trajectory of the babies of brown skin, where they're going to end up, jails, institutions, or gone, what's left? What does the path look like for my grandson and my nieces and nephews? Your grandson, your beautiful little girl. What does that life look like, man? And how can we make a difference in the communities that we can reach first, right? So the contribution, is about. I don't know how it's going to work. All I know is I've got the why. right? And I believe that was the message I've been praying for, because it's got to be bigger than building a real estate investing business that's been good to us. You know, we the last year, I'd like to tell you, you know, I've made some mistakes in the last year or two, and I'm digging myself out of some holes. All right. I mean, just because I didn't get counsel, I made choices on my own that I thought were the right choices. Always get counsel.
Yeah.
Don't become so smart that you don't need to ask questions. All right. Don't let your previous experience be the reason why you don't ask for more information, more guidance.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So you're not several $100,000 in the hole.
I learned. Oh man, I learned that one to the same tune of quite a bit of money in a few years of my life. Off a simple decision that, you know, even if you think you know, it's still not a bad idea to get counsel, because I'm talking very small decision, and man, it cost me quite a bit, but I totally understand.
Yeah, that's woo-wee.
Yeah,
Those are some of the things. I don't know if I got off track to your question.
that's okay. Yeah, no, you gave me definitely a couple things I want to circle back on. You talked about proximity, you talked about mindset, you talked about habits, you talked about thinking bigger, you talked about contribution. And as you're telling us all of this, and in the context of the question, I'm thinking, you know, one, entrepreneurship, being in business, helps raise your level of awareness about these things, right? Because when you went from an employee standpoint, you think about proximity, you might think about networking, but it's so much bigger than networking. And the people who tend to migrate for proximity tend to be people who are thinking independently. And a lot of times they're business owners, they're entrepreneurs, because they have that level of awareness. They understand the impact and the power of influence and proximity. And they are seeking out these particular individuals or these particular networks because they understand and have identified the value that these networks can add to their life, and the proximity that they can add to their life. The habits of, you know, the habits that you have to develop and the discipline that you have to develop as a business owner and as an entrepreneur. You know, I can't say that employees don't, strictly people who are employee minded don't have to have certain levels of discipline and certain levels of execution and habits. But if you stack them side by side, there may be some ways or some areas where you can identify where entrepreneurs have to be a little more disciplined, have to have a different type or a different set of habits and things like that. So I definitely think you gave us a good answer. It's just multifaceted. Entrepreneurship, business ownership offers you a different type of control, a different type of perspective, a different type of awareness. It puts a different type of demands on your time and on your life. It demands a different type of habits, but then it also gives you a different type of opportunity in terms of how you decide, you know, what you want to do with your life, when you decide when you want to do, you know, what you want to do with your life, and empowers you to believe in yourself a little bit more, where you may not have the how, but you have the why, and that why is what's going to push you through to figure out the how. So definitely some good nuggets there. So we're coming up on 4:30 is 4:25. It's definitely been a great discussion. So before we close out, can you tell people a little bit more about you know, what you're doing now in terms of the coaching and the mentoring and the real estate investing? Tell us how people can get in touch with you, and you know, any advice or insight that you have when it comes to business, entrepreneurship, or real estate investing.
Sure, I'll be glad to. Again, thank you for extending the time. I had a great time. You know, I mean, I always love talking to you. So you're so well versed, and you know, your vision is clear, and your purpose is clear. So to you, my friend, thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to add one thing on all those things you said, and what I have stepped into now as a business owner. All that stuff that Kevin said about the entrepreneurship is all true. You know, and you can do business on the beach, you can do business in the area, you can do business, you know, anywhere in the world, basically. the caveat to that is that, you know, I need accountability. So make sure you focus on having an accountability partner process in that channel somewhere. Someone that says, okay, someone you can commit to, that you can become more disciplined to and more focused on. All right. I mean, they call me Squirrel, a nickname. My daughter gave me that for a reason, right? So, and entrepreneurs are kind of like squirrels because we're always looking for the best way to do stuff and, you know, more clever and all that. So all that's not to curb that appetite, but find an accountability partner. All right. Someone that is the opposite of you, not someone that's going to agree with you, someone that's just going to go along, someone that will call you on your stuff. Okay. So I want to just add that to you. And what I'm up to now is really, you know, real estate wise, you know, we've got a couple of different avenues. Mastermind.com is where we have all our different courses, you know, they're paid courses, anywhere from $47 to a few $1,000, and just a host of different things on that. We also created a Fortune Builders, Transcending Lives Fortune Builders Facebook group, Transcending Lives of New Real Estate Investors, Going Beyond the Limits. You know, if you're interested in getting connected to a community that is about the progress of the individual, not the judgment, you know, culture of progress, Transcending Lives of New Real Estate, that may be in the chat. New real estate investors and the passion that really fuels us in terms of, you know, tying all that together is another Facebook group, Stronger Together, and it's focused on a lot of what we talked about, you know, the impact of COVID on the workplace, you know, the whole folks getting ready to leave the job and what to do there, the family, the nerves, the health part of it, you know. So Transcending Lives of New Real Estate Investors, for overwhelmed new real estate investors looking for some guidance, the mastermind.com for any courses that you're interested in getting a deeper dive on, and YouTube channel, Mass Peace. You know, I think I've started that since you and I talked last, Conversations with Geoff, you know, a YouTube channel, and it's more of what we have here. And I think our first meeting is on there, Kevin, that we did, and that platform really is going to be diverse, but it's going to be talking about, you know, what we shared today. You know, wealth mindset, habits, you know, clarity of purpose, what your contribution is, family and health. You know, and I welcome the opportunity to be here today. And sorry if you had to kind of follow my rambling sometimes.
It's all good.
The way that goes with me. So.
It's all good. You had to deal with mine too, so so we'll call it even. But that's yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful, Geoff. I thank you again for being on the call today, being on our show today, and dropping those nuggets. I definitely think that accountability is key, is definitely important. And as we talked about earlier, having control over your ego, having control over feeling like you can do it all on your own. Definitely when you get to that accountability level and you understand the value and the importance of that accountability, don't be afraid to pay for it, right? Like there's some things you can get for free. And I'm sure Geoff has a lot of free stuff, right? He mentioned some of the free stuff, but he also has some paid stuff. Do not be afraid to pay, and more so, don't be afraid to invest in yourself. All right. Invest in yourself, save yourself a lot of time, a lot of headaches, build those networks with intentionality and purpose, and align and connect with people you can identify with, you can relate to, like Geoff and his entire platform. And again, make that investment in yourself. So thanks again, Geoff, for being on Wealth Talk Tuesdays. It was a great conversation. I look forward to connecting with you again in the future. And everybody take care. We'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
All right. No problem. Take care.
Bye.